Hello friends, Notes on English Literature, 16th and 17th century poetry, The Fairy Queen by Edmund Spenser. Brief questions with answers. Brief questions 1 to 32. Question 1. Which age did Spenser belong to? Answer. Edmund Spenser belonged to the Elizabethan age from the period from 1558 to 1603. Question 2. Who was Spenser and when was he born? Answer. Edmund Spenser, the greatest non-dramatic poet of the Elizabethan age, was born in London in 1552. Question 3. Where was Spenser educated? Answer. Young Spenser was educated at the Merchant Taylors' School and at Cambridge, where he studied the classics and Italian literature. Question 4. How was Spenser influenced by the Protestant religion? Answer. While studying at the Cambridge University, Spenser came under the influence of the strong Protestant spirit, which then pervaded the university. Question 5. Who was called the poet's poet, the prince of poets by the Elizabethans? Answer. Edmund Spenser is called the poet's poet or the prince of poets by the Elizabethans. Question 6. What was the first poetical work of Spenser and when it was published? Answer. The first poetical work that earned Spenser reputation was a collection of eclogues called the Shepherd's Calendar, written from the point of view of various shepherds throughout the months of the year. It was published in 1579. Question 7. What kind of epic is the Fairy Queen? Answer. The Fairy Queen is an allegorical epic. Question 8. What stanza form and rhyme scheme did Spenser invent for the composition of the Fairy Queen? Answer. The stanza form invented by Spenser for the composition of the Fairy Queen was known as Spenserian stanza. It consists of 9 lines in iambic meters, rhyming as A, B, BC, BC, C. The first 8 lines are in pentameters and the final line is in hexameter, called Alexandrine. Question 9. What was the original plan of the Fairy Queen? Answer. Originally, the Fairy Queen was designed in 12 books, each portraying one of the 12 virtues, but only 6 were completed, dealing with holiness, temperance, chastity, fidelity, justice, and courtesy. Question 3. Why is the Fairy Queen called an epic of chivalry and romance? Answer. The Fairy Queen exhibits the heroic deeds of war, love, and adventures, centering around the historical figure of Prince Arthur. As it combines both romantic and epic qualities, it is called a romantic epic or epic of chivalry and romances. Question 11. What is the purpose of Spenser in writing the Fairy Queen? Answer. The purpose of Spenser in writing the Fairy Queen, as he declares in a letter to Sir Walter Raleigh, is to present through a historical poem the examples of a perfect gentleman or a noble person in virtuous and gentle discipline. Question 12. What different kinds of allegories are blended together in the Fairy Queen? Answer. The Fairy Queen contains 3 different types of allegories, such as moral and spiritual allegory, religious allegory, and personal and political allegory. Question 13. Divine, moral, and spiritual allegory in the Fairy Queen. Answer. The moral and spiritual allegory deals with the action and interaction of virtues and vices. According to this, the Red Cross Knight stands for holiness and Lady Una, truth, goodness, and wisdom. The dragon who has imprisoned Una's parents stands for evil. The mission of holiness is to help truth fight evil and free her parents, symbolizing human race. Question 14. What religious allegory do you trace in the Fairy Queen? And so the religious allegory in the Fairy Queen deals with the important religious events of the contemporary age. Here the Red Cross Knight stands for the Reformed Church of England, fighting the corruption, pride, and manifold evils of papacy, paganism, and Catholicism, as represented by the foul dragon of the monster of error. Question 15. What personal and political allegory do you find in the Fairy Queen? Answer. Spenser has written the Fairy Queen for the glory of Queen Elizabeth and her courtiers, many of whom were his personal friends. In Spenser's epic, she is Gloriana, the Fairy Queen, who sets various adventures to her knights, symbolizing the courtiers of the Queen of England. Question 16. Whom does the poet invoke in the Fairy Queen? Answer. Spenser, at the beginning of the Fairy Queen, prays to Sleio, the muse of history, for her help in writing his poem. He also appeals to Cupid, Venus, and Mars for their patronage in writing the romantic epic. Question 17. Whose stories are related in the Fairy Queen? Answer. The stories of knights and ladies are sung in the Fairy Queen. Question 18. Who is the noble Breton prince? Answer. Prince Arthur was the noble Breton prince whom the world had been looking for so long. He was represented by the Earl of Leicester, who was in love with Queen Elizabeth I and wanted to marry her. Question 19. Who was the fairest tranquil? Answer. In ancient time, the fairest tranquil was the name of the queen of the fairyland. Here, she stands for Queen Elizabeth the First, who was loved by the Earl of Leicester. Question 20. Who is the great lady of the greatest isle in Spenser's Fairy Queen? Answer. Queen Elizabeth is called by the poet the great lady of the greatest isle. Question 21. What appeal does Spenser make in the invocation of the Fairy Queen to Queen Elizabeth? Answer. Spenser calls Queen Elizabeth the great lady of the greatest island. She possesses heavenly majesty and graces. Her light shines throughout the world like the light of the sun. He prays to her to reflect the light of her eyes upon him to elevate his low and vile thoughts. Question 21. Who is the Red Cross Knight? Answer. The Red Cross Knight is the hero of Book 1 of the Fairy Queen. He symbolizes Saint George, the patron saint of England. Allegorically, he is Holiness or the Reformed Church of England. Question 23. Define the word knight. And so the word knight refers to a man who is given a rank of honor by a British king or queen because of his special achievements, and who has the right to be called sir. In the past, the title of the knighthood was offered to a man of high social position trained to fight as a soldier or on a horse. Question 24. What was special about the Red Cross Knight? Why is he so called? And so the knight bore a red cross on his breast in memory of his martyr, Lord Jesus Christ. His shield also bore an inscription of red cross that symbolizes his great hope. So he is called the Red Cross Knight. Question 25. What type of man was the knight? And so the Red Cross Knight was a person with a solemn face who was faithful and true to his deeds and works. Nothing could frighten him, yet he was ever dreaded. Question 26. What was the mission or objective of the journey of the Red Cross Knight? Answer. Gloriana, the queen of the fairyland, had entrusted the Red Cross Knight with a great adventure to kill a horrible and a stern dragon that had imprisoned her parents. Question 27. What was the most desired reward of the Red Cross Knight? And so the most desired reward of the Red Cross Knight was to win the favor of Gloriana, the Fairy Queen. Question 28. Who is Lady Una? Answer. Lady Una, the heroine of the Fairy Queen, Book 1, is the daughter of the Fairy King and Queen. Allegorically, she stands for truth, goodness, and wisdom. Question 29. How did Lady Una look? Answer. Lady Una was a beautiful woman riding on a white ass beside the knight, but her beauty was hidden under a veil traced in a black long robe. She was inwardly mourning some loss. Question 30. What task did the lady assign to the Red Cross Knight? Answer. The lady's parents ruled the past a kingdom from the eastern shore to the western shore, but they were enslaved, and the whole empire was ravaged by the infernal dragon. So the knight was entrusted with the task of avenging this foul dragon and free her parents. Question 31. What is the allegorical significance of the dwarf that came far behind the Red Cross Knight and Lady Una? And so the dwarf that came far behind the Red Cross Knight and the Lady Una symbolizes prudence or common sense, which is slow to act. Question 32. What type of change in nature was brought suddenly by Jove? And so while the Red Cross Knight and Lady Una were on their journey, all on a sudden, the angry Jove and caused a violent storm accompanied by rains. Thank you friends for watching my video.